This is the 10th session of first semester business economics for BCom classes. The title of this session is Law of Diminishing Marginal Utility, its exception and uses. So here in this PPT, in this session, we are going to study about the exception of law of diminishing marginal utility and the uses of law of marginal utility. Let us just recall what we have studied in the earlier session. So, in the earlier session, we have studied about the law of diminishing marginal utility. ಹೌದಲ್ವಾ? ವಿ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಸ್ಟಡಿಡ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ಲಾ ಆಫ್ ಡಿಮಿನಿಷಿಂಗ್ ಮಾರ್ಜಿನಲ್ ಯುಟಿಲಿಟಿ. ಇಳಿಮುಖ ಸೀಮಾ ಅಂತ ತುಷ್ಟಿಗುಣವನ್ನು ನಾವು ಲಾಸ್ಟ್ ಸೆಷನಲ್ಲಿ ಕಲ್ತಿದ್ದೇವೆ. ಸೊ ಅಂಡರ್ ವಿಚ್ ವಿ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಸ್ಟಡಿಡ್ ದ ಮೀನಿಂಗ್ ಆಫ್ ಯುಟಿಲಿಟಿ. Utility means want satisfying power or the capacity of the commodity to satisfy human wants ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಕಲ್ತಿದ್ದೇವೆ. Then we have studied about total utility and marginal utility. Total utility means sum of the utility of the consumption of all commodity. This is marginal means additional utility which we are deriving from the additional unit of the consumption. Then we have studied about the law. Law ಹೇಗಿದೆ? Other thing remaining same or ceteris paribus. ಇತರೆ ಅಂಶಗಳು ಸ್ಥಿರ ಇದ್ದಾಗ as we consume more and more units of the commodity, the utility derived from the same commodity goes on diminishes. So this is the statement. We have studied an illustration. We have studied with the help of schedule, with the help of a diagram, assumption we have studied, and we have studied the limitations of law of diminishing marginal utility. Okay, then today's class we are going to study about the exception of law of diminishing marginal utility. What are the exceptions where the law of diminishing marginal utility doesn't work? So that and all we have to see. So let us just once again we will recall the law. So the law of diminishing marginal utility states that as more and more goods are consumed, the utility derived from the same good as goes on falling. Okay, this is the case. This is the law actually. Law hegide, as we consume more and more unit of the commodity, the utility which we are deriving from the same goods as goes on diminishes. Clear? But though this law looks very good and this law looks practical, there are some exceptions, dear students. This law doesn't applicable in certain cases. ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದಿಷ್ಟು ಸೆಟ್ ಆಫ್ assumption ಇದೆ, but though we had such assumptions also, it doesn't work in such some of the cases. What are such areas or what are the exceptions of law of diminishing marginal utility? These are the exceptions of law of diminishing marginal utility. The first one is hobbies. In case of hobbies, you remember, in case of hobbies, you can say the hobbies of coin collection, the hobbies of antique or historical ಐಟಮ್ಸ್ ಕಲೆಕ್ಷನ್ಸ್. ಕಾಯಿನನ್ನು ಕಲೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡೋ ಅವನ ಹತ್ರ ಹೋಗಿ ಅವನ ಹತ್ರ ಆಲ್ರೆಡಿ ಒಂದು ಕಾಯಿನ್ಸ್ ಇದೆ ಅಂಥದ್ದು, ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಕಾಯಿನ್ಸ್ ಅವನಿಗೆ ಕೊಟ್ಟರೆ ಅವನು ಖುಷಿಯಿಂದ ತಗೊಳ್ತಾನೆ. ಓಕೆ, ಸೊ ಥಿಯರಿ ಪ್ರಕಾರ ಏನಾಗಬೇಕು, ಅವನ ಹತ್ರ ಇದ್ದರೆ ಅಥವಾ ಅವನು ಆಲ್ರೆಡಿ ಒಂದು ಕನ್ಸ್ಯೂಮ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಅಂಥದ್ದೇ ಕನ್ಸ್ಯೂಮ್ ಮಾಡಿದರೆ ಅವನಿಗೆ ಯುಟಿಲಿಟಿ ಕಡಿಮೆ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಹೋಗಬೇಕು, ಬಟ್ ಇವನಿಗೇನಾಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ, ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಸೊ ಹಿಸ್ಟಾರಿಕಲ್ ಕಲೆಕ್ಷನ್ಸ್, ಈಗ ಹಿಸ್ಟಾರಿಕಲ್ ಕಲೆಕ್ಷನ್ಸಲ್ಲಿ ಇರ್ತದೆ. ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಈಗ ನಮ್ಮ ಕಡೆ ನೋಡೋದಿದ್ರೆ, ಓಕೆ, ಈಗ ಏನು ಹಿಂದಿನ ಕಾಲದಲ್ಲಿ ಭತ್ತ ಒಂದು ಮುಡೆಯೊಳಗೆ ಹೇಗಿತ್ತು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ನೋಡುವಂಥ ಇನ್ಸ್ಟ್ರೂಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ಗಳಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಅಥವಾ ಹಿಂದಿನ ಕಾಲದ ಮರದ ಐಟಮ್ಸ್ ಅದು ಇದು ಏನೆಲ್ಲ ಕಲೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡುವಂಥ ಒಬ್ಬನಿಗೆ ಒಂದು ಹುಚ್ಚಿರ್ತದೆ ಅಂತ ಇಟ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ. ಅವನಿಗೆ ಇದ್ದಂಥದ್ದೇ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಕೊಟ್ಟರೂ ಕೂಡ ದ ಯುಟಿಲಿಟಿ ಆಫ್ ದ ಪರ್ಸನ್ ಇಸ್ ಗೋಸ್ ಆನ್ ಇನ್ಕ್ರೀಸಿಂಗ್, ಇಟ್ ಡಸಂಟ್ come down. So that's why the law of diminishing marginal utility will not applicable in case of hobbies, you can say. Okay, hobbies may be, you can say the coin collection, or you can say the historical antique collections. Okay, this is the first one. Then the second one is drunkards and drug addicts. Okay, so definitely we have seen ಡ್ರಂಕರ್ಸ್ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ, ನಾವು ನೋಡಿರ್ತೇವೆ. ಸಣ್ಣದಿರುವಾಗ ಯು ಮೇ ರಿಮೆಂಬರ್, ನಿಮ್ಮ ರೋಡ್ ಸೈಡಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾರೋ ಒಬ್ಬರು ತೂಗಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇರುವಂಥವ್ರು, ಅವರು ಅಷ್ಟು ಫಿಲ್ ಆಗಿರ್ತಾರೆ, ಮತ್ತೆ ಅವರು ಕುಡಿಯುವುದನ್ನೇ ನೋಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಅಥವಾ ಅವ್ರ ಹತ್ರ ಹೋಗಿ ನಿಮ್ಗೇನು ಕುಡಿಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಬೇಕಾ ಅಥವಾ ಏನಾದರೂ ಪೆಗ್ ಬೇಕಾ ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದರೆ ಹಿ ವಿಲ್ ಬಿ ವೆರಿ ಹ್ಯಾಪಿ. Yes, but law of diminishing marginal utility, what it says as we consume more and more unit of the commodity, that must be reduced. Okay, the utility from the commodity will be reduced or diminishes. Adu kadime aagta bartade, but here in this case it increases. Then the next one is miser. Miser in the sense he is a greedy. Miser you can say ಜಿಪುಣ. ಓಕೆ, ಮೈಸರ್, ಜಿಪುಣ, ಜುಗ್ಗ ಆ ಥರ ಇರ್ತಾರಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಜಿಪುಣರಿಗೆ they are characterized by having anything excess will give them excess satisfaction. Okay, having anything with them and further they always think of how to collect more and more. Okay, miserಗೆ ಇದು ಅಪ್ಲಿಕೇಬಲ್ ಆಗುವುದಿಲ್ಲ. ಮ್ಯೂಸಿಕ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಪೊಯೆಟ್ರಿ. ಸೊ ಇನ್ ಕೇಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಮ್ಯೂಸಿಕ್, ಪೊಯೆಟ್ರಿ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಆಲ್ಸೋ ಇನ್ ಕೇಸ್ ಆಫ್ ರೀಡಿಂಗ್, ಆ್ಯಸ್ ವಿ ರೀಡ್ ಮೋರ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಮೋರ್, okay, as we listen more and more of the music, we never feel tired. Okay, and the musician or the poetry, as he writes more and more, he gets more of the utility. So thus this will not applicable in case of music, poetry and reading. And finally it doesn't applicable in case of money. This is of course, dear students, what is the thing is ದ ಮನಿ. ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್, ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಎಷ್ಟೋ ಬಡವರು ಇರ್ತಾರೆ, ಎಷ್ಟೋ ಶ್ರೀಮಂತರು ಇರ್ತಾರೆ. ಅಫ್ಕೋರ್ಸ್ ವಿ ನೋ ದ್ಯಾಟ್ ಪುವರ್ ಪೀಪಲ್ ವಾಂಟ್ಸ್ ಮನಿ ಟು ದೇರ್ ಲೈವ್ಲಿಹುಡ್ಸ್, their everyday's life, to carry their life, to carry their children's and all other things. But we have seen some of the richest, top richest in the world also, but still they are doing work. Okay, they are the topmost business person in the world. They are still doing the business because ನಮ್ಗೊಂದೊಂದ್ಸಲ ಅನ್ನಿಸ್ಬೋದು, ಅವರ 7 ತಲೆಮಾರು ಕೂತು ತಿನ್ನುವಷ್ಟು ಅವ್ರ ಹತ್ರ ದುಡ್ಡಿದೆ, ಮತ್ತು ಯಾಕೆ ಇಷ್ಟು ಟೆನ್ಷನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ದುಡಿತಾರೆ? The utility of the money doesn't come down, dear students. As we become the owner of more and more number of money, the utility derived from the same goes on increases. So that's why you can say the exception of law of demand is money also. So there are exceptions like hobbies, drunkards, miser, music, poetry, reading and money. So other than also if you think law of diminishing marginal utility doesn't work in so and so cases, you can add, but you have to justify how does it doesn't applicable here. Okay, let us see the uses of law of diminishing marginal utility. The law of diminishing marginal utility is useful first of all in the cases of customer. Actually this law guides a consumer to plan a budget. Okay, it helps a consumer to plan a budget. He has to plan a budget in such a way that he can derive a maximum satisfaction within which what is available with him. Okay, so the first one is it helps for the customer. The law of diminishing marginal utility helps for the customer. How it helps? Hege adu help ಮಾಡ್ತದೆ? It helps in case of planning a budget. To get how to plan a budget? A budget should be planned in such a way that he has to get the maximum satisfaction from the available resources. Okay, so this is the first one. And at the same time, the law of diminishing marginal utility also helps for the producer. Producer, especially in case of setting a price of the commodity and deciding a sales policy and to grab maximum profit. Remember, law of diminishing marginal utility helps for the producer in case of setting a price. Okay, setting a price, then to decide a sales policy, how should be a sales policy and what are the target group of the producer, all those things it will help. And the last one is to reach their objective, that is maximum profit. Okay, so in these three areas, law of diminishing marginal utility helps for the producer. And law of diminishing marginal utility also helps to the government. It helps to the government in such a way that to improve the various economic policies, maybe or especially in terms of to achieve social justice and improve the welfare of the people. Okay, social justice in the sense even the poor and richer has to get the same kinds of satisfaction, or bringing up all these weaker section into the mainstream, or else it is not only the actual idea of bringing up the weaker section, but making the rich and poor in the same zone. Okay, so this is actually social justice. Without deleting anybody, they should get the best satisfaction. Okay, so this is the three important uses of law of diminishing marginal utility. I repeat, you remember there is only, it will help for three areas. One is customer, producer and government. Customer, how it helps? To plan a good budget plan. How will be a good budget plan? It should get them a maximum satisfaction by the uses of available resources. How it will help for the producer? It will help for the producer in case of setting the price and deciding a sales policy and make a maximum profit. And for the government, it helps for, especially in case of formulating and implementing various economic policies and to reach the goals like social justice and welfare of the people. Okay, this is the uses. So finally, we can conclude by saying that utility is a feeling of satisfaction, pleasure, or you can say happiness. Okay, utility is a feeling of satisfaction, you can say it's a pleasure, or you can say it's a happiness. The demand of goods depend upon the amount of utility derived by the consumer. That is, of course, dear students, always demand for the commodity depends upon the utility which is derived from the same commodity. For example, higher the utility means higher will be the demand. Lesser the utility means lesser will be the demand. Therefore, it is very necessary to measure the utility to determine the demand of goods and services. Okay, the utility is a basic concept in market. So this is the exception and uses of law of diminishing marginal utility. It is very practical. You have to think how it applicable. Okay, how it is applicable, and at the same time when it is a case of exception also, how the exception works. You have to think and you have to applicable. It very practical, and you can say it is applied part of economics. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.